everyone, and welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down and chatting with Paul Lewis, who is the founder of FHF Gear. For those that are not familiar, FHF Gear makes some wonderful products in the outdoor space, make a lot of modular products. There's two that I use a lot, and that's the chest rig and the bino harness. The chest rig is really versatile. In fact, all their stuff's very versatile. You can kind of add and subtract whatever you need. But this chest rig that I use primarily for turkey hunting in the springtime allows me to hold everything that I need, all my calls. And they actually sell a turkey hunting kit that you can kind of use to adapt your chest rig for that particular purpose. If you wanted to take it fishing in the summertime, it's a great time to do that, and you get the fishing rig. There's a lot of different things you can kind of plug and play. And the bino harness is one that I really love and use year round. Keeps my binoculars really protected, allows me to store a few extra things. I have a couple other pouches that I put on their new wing system. Super comfortable, super versatile. Highly suggest you guys go check those out. We talked about a lot of their product line. They also have rifle cases that are phenomenal. They're water resistant. He even talks about testing them with 40 pounds weight and the rifle inside. And really, they just work phenomenally well in the water. So you want to keep something really secure and, something that's weather resistant, weatherproof. This is a wonderful product for you. Great rifle cases, and they're built to be really slimline and fit into hard cases for when you're traveling. Really wonderful idea. Great design. Paul also talked about his 20 years of service as a law enforcement agent in Montana, being on the SWAT team, and how he started to design gear that maybe didn't exist, or maybe he just wanted to add some things to it. And eventually it became FHF Gear and had a full-time company. He ran basically, he'd be working during the day, and then at nighttime he'd be working on putting together gear and building customized orders. And he talks about meeting a lot of the people in the outdoor industry, some of the leaders who then came and asked for custom work, and he would develop things for them, and how that kind of snowballed into being a full-time thing that he now does. And he and his wife are really running this company. They have a team of some wonderful people there with them. But FHF Gear is just a phenomenal company. Paul is an amazing gentleman, a wonderful guy to chat with. Just great time. I really enjoyed this podcast. I had so much fun, and over 2 hours before I even realized it. So this was a great one. I know that you guys are going to really enjoy the listen and learning more about FHF Gear. You can go to FHFGear.com. You can go check out the MeatEater.com. Check out all the families of companies there. Really some wonderful companies, and you can learn more and see some really great gear, and go ahead and pick some up for the next hunting season. I think you'll be glad you did. And for those who have not yet subscribed to this podcast, and you're just kind of checking it out maybe for the first time, please subscribe, like it, share it with your friends, leave reviews. Those help me out a lot. I'm trying to get this out and get the word and the message and the stories and the products of the people that I'm interviewing out to a larger audience. So, I'd appreciate any help that you can, give me with that by subscribing and liking and sharing and all this. So without further ado, let's check out this podcast. Thanks everyone once again for tuning in. And here it is, Paul Lewis with FHF Gear. Hey, Paul, how you doing today, man? Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Good deal. Well, I know we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, your company, FHF Gear, and your law enforcement background. I know you guys got a lot going on with the company, and since you've joined up too as well with MeatEater. I kind of wanted to just start out with talking about your love of the outdoors and how you got into hunting and fishing. I know it was a little bit later on in the life, but you grew up in Montana, and I can walk that out because I think that's kind of a precursor to how you eventually have a company in this space.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when I think about it that I'm in an outdoor company now. Like you said, growing up in Montana, I was always wanting to be outside. Spent a lot of time hiking, some fishing growing up. My dad died when I was young, and so I kind of had to tag along with neighbors here and there, and get outside. And I was always outdoorsy, but never had anybody really to really lead me along. None of my friends' dads hunted, didn't hunt, didn't grow up hunting, didn't have guns in the house. Mom was working all the time and not outdoorsy at all. Came to college and actually, had some friends that like to hunt, and I'd go out with them occasionally, borrow rifles, and go out and chase deer around, but was never real serious about it. Really, in college I was skiing and having fun and doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing, and then had an interest in wildlife my whole life and sciences, and so I was majoring in wildlife management. And looking back now, kind of a naive view of what I would have been doing versus the what I actually knew in the life I had lived prior to that. And obviously with wildlife management, you're involved with the hunting and the fishing and all that stuff that you had a marginal view of. And it really wasn't until I got hired with the sheriff's office, kind of my best friend I met through the sheriff's office, got me into archery hunting. And my first year, really, I bought one set of camo and I followed him around the woods, and he taught me to call, which worked out well for him. So I was just calling for him while he hunted. And then, transitioned into buying my own bow and chasing elk, and just fell in love with that time of year in the woods in Montana. The leaves are turning yellow, the elk are screaming. You get to have good naps in the middle of the afternoon, and it just absolutely fell in love with that. Being out that time of year, it kind of helped recharge me. It was a great way I planned around my whole year around September and taking time off and kind of recharging myself, and just have always loved it. Rifle hunting to me was kind of at that point, like, if I had to do it, fine, but there's a lot more people out. It's colder. The elk are harder to find. We'd had some good guys trips where we'd go out and hunt antelope or deer, in the October, November. But archery hunting for me, and specifically chasing elk, was just my passion. Completely learning from scratch, so I look back at those first, still to this day, make mistakes every day, but those first few years was kind of, it's always the good old days of hunting. And I'd screw up on a group of elk and go over the next ridge and screw up on the next group of elk, and go over the next ridge and screw up on the next group of elk. And it was about the time wolves got reintroduced, and so I'd see a wolf here and there, but pretty rare. And now, it's at a point where you spend your season finding that group of elk that you're going to screw up on. And then if you screw up on them, it's like, well, we need to find a new area because I ran them out of here. So I look back and I'm like, man, if I knew then what I knew now about chasing elk, I would have been probably a lot more successful. So, starting out late in life was, is fun and interesting, but, I wish I'd have known, been taught earlier in life. That kind of led into building gear for myself. I was cheap, building gear for my team. I was on a SWAT team here. We have a part-time team in Bozeman, and I was cheap, so I wanted to build my own gear because I was too cheap to buy it. And then I figured all the gear, even my hunting gear, I'd buy stuff that was the right color so I could wear it during a SWAT call out as well as hunting, and kind of get dual use out of it.
Yeah.
And I kind of have always made gear with that same idea in the back of my head. It was like, if I can make it versatile so you get more than one use out of it, it seems to make more sense to me. And like I said, started building gear for myself, and then building gear for buddies, and kind of custom orders here and there, just word of mouth. And really that's how the company started. Just, was on some online forums and doing a lot of tactical gear initially. And then, being in Bozeman, getting the right folks here, the Newbergs and the Matzingers, and Steve had ties to Bozeman at the time, Ranella, and all of a sudden, they're wearing gear that I made, and, I'm making it all in a spare bedroom or in my basement at that point. And so hard to kind of keep up, and finally got to a point where products, the first bino harnesses I made were, you were able to call up, say, hey, I want mine black with yellow thread. I'm like, okay, and so you just custom order it, or, custom build every one at a time. And then, got to a point where I just, 18 months behind, and really the prices I was charging was not paying for my time.
Right.
And I'm spending all my time in the basement instead of playing with my kids and doing other things that I should have been doing. And so, the challenge of kind of knowing nothing about business, like I told you before, I have a biology degree and was a cop. I'm not a business management guy, and so kind of made a lot of mistakes along the way, and still making those, but doing my best and getting stuff into a production facility that would take, especially at that time, low production runs. I think my first production run was like 300 bear spray holsters, and I was scared to death, because that's money coming out of my pocket to fund that. And I was like, what if I don't sell them? What if nobody wants them? I had no idea what was going to happen, and those quickly disappeared. And so I have always run the business in a way that I wasn't in debt. So I'd roll that into the next order and roll that money into the next order, and just kind of build it slowly, and it was all word of mouth. We didn't do any advertising until I retired from the sheriff's office, nearly 10 years later. And really just kind of organically grew and tried to build things that people wanted and that lasted, and that, take the feedback. That was the positive side of doing the small runs, is that, I'd do the first run and get some feedback, and, they'd hear, hey, it'd be cool if this, so you could change that on the next run, and pretty quickly turn products and evolve products, from one run to the next. And it, got to a point I retired in 2018 from the sheriff's office, and we were at a point where my wife and I, were working full time for FHF, and we hired our first employee, Rick Hutton. He's our product line manager now, and I think within the first week of him coming to work, we went to a meeting actually with MeatEater to discuss doing like a co-branded thing, or even, podcast advertisement, just something, like I
Right.
said, we're still, it would have been probably our annual budget for advertising, do one podcast. And the discussion didn't hardly go anywhere, because they were like, hey, we really like what you're doing. Steve had been wearing, some of the gear I'd built for him for years by then, and we'd be interested in having you join the team. And we actually turned him down, because I had just retired, just started doing this full time. We had a lot of irons in the fire, and, we're like, we're just going to grow this like crazy. It's going to be great. And we're going to start advertising. And so we turned him down, and, kept the relationship we had, but, just kind of kept on doing what we're doing. And it was great to have that organic growth, and the relationships we had. It's funny, the outdoor industry, I'm a First Light guy, I'm a Sitka guy, I'm a Kuiu guy, and, you can't talk to each other, and any of the brands you're associated with can't also be associated with each other. And so I kind of felt like I was immune from that. Like I felt like I was friends with everybody,
Yeah.
and a year later, we'd had some, hiccups in production, and, issues that went on, and it became kind of a stressful year. Our supply chain kind of fell apart, and we were just kind of getting going again. And MeatEater reapproached us in 2020, I guess, and said, hey, we're still open to talk. And at that point, I think we were at a point where we're like, this is hard by ourselves. We had grown to a point where we realized, maybe we do need some help. And, it felt like a natural partnership to kind of jump in with them. And, the idea being, a lot of that back end stuff that we didn't want to spend doing accounting and, the placing, filling out spreadsheets, all that crap. I didn't want any part of that. And I had
Right.
gotten to a point where I had gone years without, I mean, a bit of an exaggeration, but years without touching a sewing machine. I was selling products that I had designed early and then spent all of my time packing boxes and answering customer service emails, and really did not have time to do any updated designs, new designs. I had notebooks full of ideas, but just didn't have time to execute on any of it. I had kind of limited machines and different things that, we were looking at upgrading. And, that MeatEater partnership allowed us to basically tap into funding that we didn't necessarily have at our fingertips to really get kind of the best machinery. And, I had a small laser cutter and, a decent sewing machine, but now we've got a pretty good shop with, high-end stuff. And we've been able to hire, Phil as our developer. He's actually the first guy who ordered a custom bino harness years and years ago, and wanted one without magnets. So that kind of led to that initial design. And now he's our developer, so it's kind of keeping it in the family, so to speak.
That's cool.
And yeah, just kind of growing, and still, it's Jen and I feel like Jen is our brand manager.
Mhm.
She's my wife. She runs, the advertising and marketing side of things. And then, I design gear and this partnership has allowed me to kind of get back to obviously putting out new gear. We've tried to put out a bunch lately. And then, Phil and Rick still work here. So it's still the same OG crew, with, the ups and downs. I won't say there's not pros and cons to being part of a bigger corporation and kind of the bureaucracy that comes along with that. But, as an overall, they're able to push out those bigger purchase orders faster, and rather than trying to bankroll those, myself, that's been nice, have a salary and health benefits. And as an entrepreneur, you sometimes think, well, maybe I won't get a paycheck this month because I want to do this. And we were to a point where it wasn't bad, but you never know when you're going to get a hiccup like COVID and not be able to buy material, and
Sure.
zippers aren't available, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's nice to have kind of a little bit of a safety net behind you.
Absolutely. And well, you kind of talked about, some of those issues during COVID, but one thing that I want to make sure the listeners understand too is what you're also trying to do is keep everything here. You're trying to have it made in the USA, or you do. And
Yep.
so that is something where, those are the options for some companies to go over to China, to go overseas and get things done. But that's it. And so if there are issues in supply chains, there's even further issues in the sense that you are very localized in what you're trying to do, and keep it in your same, form and format of keeping jobs here and things too, and manufacturing here. So I can only imagine that the challenges there of, when a lot of companies went, belly up, or
Mm-hmm.
materials are hard to find, and, they're stuck in different, areas of development where you can't like kind of get to, having things that you need. And,
Yeah. And
I,
we were lucky in COVID in that respect, because a lot of our sewing contractors actually do. I mean, everything I build, I use materials that are kind of taken from that tactical world. So,
Mhm.
and I think this is true of a lot of hunting companies now, where you're using materials that didn't get shut down in COVID because you couldn't shut down the defense side of things. So
Right,
the
right.
materials were still there. The sewing contractors were also building plate carriers and were building mag pouches, and had government contracts. So they weren't shut down. They just spread people out a little more and
Yep.
slowed down. And so our production kept going for the most part, and like you said, we try and source things here. There's a few parts here and there. Zippers are hard to find in the US. And YKK is, I mean, I think they do have a berry compliant line, but, for the most part, what we're using is, we don't have those government contracts, but, there were some shortages here and there, but for the most part, we did really well. And people in COVID didn't have to go to work, so they were outside, and our business actually, picked up during COVID, and we were busier, other than our front doors of the shop being locked most of the time, which lent itself to giving us more time to design more cool stuff. So again, pros and cons, but
Sure.
yeah, it was an interesting time.
That's, I had a lot more time to search for products and things that I was looking for, and that's when I first, found you guys and got,
Yep.
the I guess the Pro M bino harness, and I just started getting things there, and moving into having like the first generation chest rig and some, I know you've kind of done the Gen 2 versions of those too, and I'd like to get into that and talk about that in a minute, but I kind of wanted to come back to what you were talking about with, with then working, under with the MeatEater network there. And, you're saying like, because I know when you first started, you were running the website, like you were saying, you're taking all
Hmm.
the customer emails and you're kind of doing it all, and you and Jen. And
Hmm.
um now I guess that kind of gives you a lot more focus on, like you said, like product development and stuff too. But I'm sure one of those things with working in a big company is like there's got to be timelines and things that you have to hit that maybe before you kind of could organically do it on your own company. Is there certain things that have been a challenge for you in running a business in that sense where, it's because I'm sure they have, marketing budgets and promotional things that they have to kind of do in certain timelines of the year and things too. What does that look like on your end, and how has that changed, and how have you had to adapt?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's something that I think most people don't probably recognize. But yeah, they have this marketing calendar that goes 2 years out of, with the idea of um, making sure all your assets are ready. You have samples out. We've sent samples to influencers to keep secret, but get photos of and test and run. So then, by the time we do a full production run, they're able to come back and say, hey, I blew this seam out, or, it'd be cool if you added a buckle here and it would allow this to happen. So it's been nice in that respect, but you're right in that that's not something I'm used to. And I could kind of set my own schedule. Now I feel like um, there are times like I'll make something like, man, this is like first try, it's perfect. I'm ready to go. And they're like, well, that's not on the calendar. We need to hold that for, 6 months. I'm like, that seems ridiculous. Why? And in the bigger picture, it does make sense. And then other
Mhm.
times where they're like, I need all the prototypes done by this date for, a meeting or whatever. And I'm like, I have an idea, but it's, certainly not an artist. I'm not artistic in the least, but it's the best analogy I have, like you do a piece of art and it might not work the first time. It might take a couple of go rounds. It might take, I might get it done first try and it'll take a week, or it'll be this fob. The bino harness took me 2 years of changing and giving up on it and coming back to the design and the ideas and completely changing directions. And it took longer than I expected to get it done from my end, and then even longer to kind of dial in the production process to have that repeatable on a scale that we were ordering at. And even just we use in the front of that there's some stretch material, and it's each sewer has to it's almost like you get a feel for how that material stretches in the machine, and if you don't get it right, then it doesn't close right or open right. And just building that repeatability in, and making sure the processors are done. And then we got our first round of those in and sent them out to some folks, and immediately got some feedback that was valuable feedback. And you change gears last minute and say, instead of, we used to have in the front of the fob, there's a metal bar sits in here, so you can kind of go around the front of the bridge of your binoculars. And initially we had kind of a metal rod in there. Well, as you bend a metal rod, if you pushed on it, it would spin and actually work against you getting the binos in there if it wasn't sewn in perfectly tight. And so we, switched that to a bar so that it's not going to roll and move, and, kind of last minute changes. And that pushed I think when you and I first started emailing, we were looking at trying to do this podcast in April, and that launch of that product had been pushed from January to February to March to April at that point. And, it just, based on, getting those bars made and manufactured and, all that stuff, it just kind of adds up. And then with the family of companies that we're in, Phelps works very similar to me, small company, a lot of his labor is done right there in-house. But First Light works on a whole different schedule, and with the company trying to kind of align those and make it efficient on the back end, it doesn't always translate between processes. And so that has been a kind of a challenge to both educate them on how we work and me learn how I can better fit into that kind of process and get those things on the calendar and go, have them be efficient, at the end of the day.
Sure. That makes sense.
I don't know if I answered your question or just rambled. But.
Yeah, no, you totally did. I mean, I was just kind of curious because, I have, different companies I've run, kind of entrepreneurial mindset. I've had things, with my company, Matt My Ranch, with my buddy Colin. It's something that we started out where we didn't have a lot of overhead and things and materials because we'd make a map, get it printed somewhere and ship it off. So really a lot of our time was spent just behind the computer designing things and working with our clients and things. So we didn't have a lot of money we had to do up front, except for like business cards and some things and eventually some hats and some, promotional stuff.
Right.
But that was, trying to scale that up too. And then, now we're doing some work, some partnerships with OnX and we're working with Doug Duran, who's one of the MeatEater contributors, such with his company sharing the land, and, things are scaling up, and just the idea of that scaling up and getting more business in and trying to make sure that even as a small back end house, some people don't realize, that there's 2-3 of us that are doing the majority of the work for that. And, one day you get a flood, do some advertising and all of a sudden you get, 20 new orders. And for us, it's like, okay,
Yep.
we are not going to have your stuff ready in 2 weeks, and now just realistic expectations. It's like, you'll get something in 6 weeks, we've got 27 orders ahead of you or whatever it is. And just kind of, that scalability, but also I can imagine that freedom of, like you said, not having to do the spreadsheets or doing, a lot of the things that keep you away from the product development, the things that you are interested in, your mind spinning. You're like, I want to make this thing better, and so, building the better mousetrap and things that it's neat that you can kind of have a more, focused, avenue of what it is that you want to do, as opposed to some of those back end things that aren't as much fun.
Yeah. And that's certainly been nice. Some of the things they ask us to, have a certain number of new products. That's not even true. They want to have new introductions, relatively recently, because it helps, drive customers and sales. And, at the end of the day, we want to keep that going, keep my job. But at the same time, in fact, during acquisition, Steve called me and he's like, at the end of the day, you make what you want to make. He kept creative control of his company, and he wanted to make sure I kept creative control of this in the way that, like Steve has some harebrained ideas occasionally, sometimes, he has something I'm like, never would have thought of that. Let's try it. And honestly, if Steve's endorses it, it usually works pretty well. But, he told me, he's like, I have a ton of ideas and I'll bounce them off of you. And at the end of the day, it's your decision whether or not you make them. So that's been nice to kind of have that freedom. At the same time, I find myself like, I do have a lot of ideas and I'll find myself busy and just buried in a project. And, and then the end of the year comes and I'm like, man, I was going to update the belt loop on that old pouch. And I just have never taken the day it would take to do it. And, so there's those kind of things that go through because I get focused on the next coolest thing and instead of updating old stuff but I've tried to do it bit by bit, but it always ends up falling to the wayside. But yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, like I said, a lot of pros and the occasional hiccup, but it's worked out.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a minute to tell you guys about Horizon Smokers. That's right. Horizon Smokers, the best smokers I've ever used. I love barbecuing. I love grilling. I love smoking. And all my needs were met with one awesome unit. I've got the 20-inch RD Special Marshall Smoker. I got this from Horizon Smoker a few months ago, and I have been using it. I love it. I have made some hog ribs on it. I've done some deer. I've done sausage, vegetables. I've got a brisket that's just waiting to be cooked this weekend. They make some of the best smokers. I mean, it's just hard to get your head around it until you see the quality and construction of these builds. They have a convection plate that you can move back and forth to eliminate that hot spot or create that hot spot. If you want to cook something over here at this temperature and you want to throw your brisket on at this temperature on the back end, man, you can work with it. I've got 2 temperature gauges, which kind of help me control each, heat unit on either side. I got some grilling I'm going to be doing on that pretty soon on the right side. So you can use it barbecue, grill, smoker, whatever it is you want to do, you can do it with the Horizon Smokers. So go over there to horizonsmokers.com today, figure out which one's right for you and place that order. Tell them I sent you. George Blitch, Son of a Blitch Productions, Matt My Ranch over here. And yeah, check it out. Well, I'd love to return back to your idea of like updates because this year, like you were saying too, with the your development there of the fob bino harness and the new chest rig Gen 2, I'd like to talk about those because that is something that I had both of the predecessor versions of, and I'm blown away by how awesome. I mean, the originals are great too. There's nothing knocking those, but some of the stuff too that you guys had developed with just the straps and being able to have this, the air coming through those. And it's just, especially in Texas where it's, hotter than hell some days, anything like that is great relief. But, your development of being able to have a down opening, because, for those, I'll let you kind of explain, fob and what that means and what this is, compared to your old, but this alone, just being able to have the access has been a game changer, and it's brilliant, man. So if you can kind of maybe talk about some of the advancements from Gen 1 to Gen 2 here and what people are going to see as they as they're purchasing the newer version, obviously and maybe talk about the wings and stuff too, and the benefits thereof.
Yeah, so I'll go, I guess, first in the origination of that first bino harness literally was done as a custom order to not have magnets. We didn't want the slap of a magnet. At that point, the only bino harnesses I'm aware of, there was the old cricket horn straps that we all wore, the elastic bungee. Alaska Guide was out by then, but to be honest, I wasn't familiar with them. They were relatively small, but they were out. S4, I don't know if you remember those. They were kind of a cup that went over the top and bottom of your binoculars. They're out of business now, I believe. And they came out actually about the same time I started at least doing the custom stuff. I think that was and Badlands was out. They had that full magnetic front closure, and that's actually what prompted. That was the one complaint you heard about the Badlands, is one that the pad on the back was big. It was hard to wear under a backpack because it had like a built-in hydration fold-out thing, and that if you weren't careful when you closed it, it would snap shut. It got momentum and would make that big slap. And so the idea was to be minimal, low profile. I had a pocket for a wind check, a little zipper pocket for tags. First ones didn't even have that. And then just, we put that bungee closure on there to be kind of low tech, adjustable, and obviously quiet. So that's what we did. Made those myself, like I said, custom one at a time for much longer than I should have. And then, kind of settled on 3 sizes that people typically ordered based on the binoculars, and finally just had them built, in one color, and then I started adding colorways and then evolved them to make them a little more modular, putting Molly on the bottom. That's where the Pro M came from, adding the M for the Molly at the bottom. And, there's been several generations of them. And I had been toying with the idea of the top opening for years, and knew that the best way to do that was going to be magnets. And to be honest, was kind of like hesitant to do it just because of the direction I'd already gone, building something to get away from magnets.
Right.
So I kind of stayed away from it. I had some drawings here and there of ideas, but didn't really pursue it. Some of the other competitors, eventually came out with those. Obviously, our biggest competitors got them. And I didn't want to just build something that was kind of a me too, that didn't solve the problems we saw with anything else. So we went through our own feedback that we got in our own bino harnesses. We went through, reviews of every company out there. And I think recently I looked, there's 26 major brands making bino harnesses now. At the time I started this, there was, 3 or 4 of us. And every clothing company has their own bino harness. Every optics company has their own bino harness, and they're just everywhere. And so we went through like every review we could find, online forums, everything, and just kind of wrote down and got what we felt were the most common complaints, most common problems, most common things that people loved, and tried to put those all into one. You can't make everybody happy, and recognize that, but
Sure.
tried to do something that kind of encapsulated all those things. People do obviously like that top opening. We have a huge military support system here. We got patch walls everywhere. Guys bring their stuff in, and working at the sheriff's office, I worked with a lot of guys that had come out of the Afghanistan conflicts, and just like super great dudes. I love them. And everybody, we have veterans that work here. And I remember going home to Jen, and I was like, this forward opening bino, what are we going to call it? What are we going to name this? And we have acronyms here and there. So like FOB for forward opening bino, and that's FOB. Forward operating base. We can kind of give a shout out to the military folks, and use that kind of play on the, say, base of operations for all your most critical gear, and still I felt like give a level of respect for the guys who've spent time on a FOB. We wanted something that would open from the top. And I don't know if you're watching on video, not listening, but the idea being, you limit the range of motion. Instead of coming all the way down to the bottom or all the way up, and flagging potentially, we wanted the ability to kind of do that shorter range of motion, be able to stay open here, and then not have the ability for that to get momentum if you did bump that and slap shut. And then we really played with different weights of magnets. We've actually got 6 magnets in the top, and a different one in the middle where you can hang on to, and with that grab handle you can really kind of ease that down, and you have positive grip on it the whole time, so that it's not going to just slap shut and create a bunch of noise in a tree stand or whatever. And we've played a lot with the magnets, and one of the things you hear about is the whether or not it affects your compass. And we've played a lot with it. And I think in my experience, unless I'm holding my phone right next to it, or your standard compass, which,
right,
I'm not using unless I'm all out of batteries, or completely lost. But it really doesn't, if I hold it, half an arm's length away, it doesn't affect it. And then, this airframe harness, like you mentioned, having that breathability, something that kind of, I felt like this was a huge step up from the old straps, and it's more comfortable in my opinion. It's contoured over your shoulder. It has this, the padding underneath that really seems to spread the load. It's actually a little bit wider. And this is one of those things, like working for a corporation is funny, because they're like, well, this is pretty expensive to make, and unless we charge $250 for it, we're not going to make the margins on it that we normally make on things. And is there a way we could just go back to your normal straps? And that would, because this is ridiculously expensive just to make the shoulder strap. Just, this is all laser cut, and then and we changed the shape a little bit to make it easier to sew, instead of having the first samples had like 90-degree corners on them. And it wasn't something I felt we could compromise on. If we felt like we were going to make the best harness on the market, we had to keep the best shoulder harness on the market,
Sure.
and kept that breathability in there. We ended up, using super thick air mesh on the back to give more breathability there. And it's like triple the the thickness of most air. If you compare your old Pro M to the mesh on that, it's noticeably thicker, a lot more breathable. And then additionally, one of the common things we heard from our old harnesses as well as other harnesses on the market was the attachment of accessories and them being kind of floppy on the straps or having to, attach certain ways. And we wanted to keep that super modular so the user could set it up how they wanted to and how it would be super stable. And so that's the idea of those wings. And there was a couple others on the market that had put some MOLLE platforms sewn in. But then you're stuck with it. Like, it covers more of your chest, is again not as breathable, and becomes bulky in my opinion if you don't want it. And so again, the idea being, let the user set this up how they want to, and both depending on their body type, the season, what they're hunting, where they're hunting, what they need. And I switch mine up all the time. I mean, I guess I have a benefit that I can pick one for every season and have one of every color if I want to, but even that becomes a pain in the butt switching everything out, all the time, every time you do something. So having those wings allows me to, add a rangefinder, add a E3, a little general purpose pouch, or take it on and off depending on the season. And it keeps it up high, keeps it out of the way of the draw of a bear spray or pistol if you carry a gun under there. Just makes it all that more modular. And then making those wings, we wanted those to be able to be used on the chest rig. So that's part of the reason we updated the chest rig. And just, a whole lot of thought went into this. There's a whole video online where MeatEater folks came in and did some video in the shop and spent 2 days here. And I'm like, this is going to be the dumbest video I've ever seen. And, me talking, and it turned out really cool. Like they have some incredible editors over there that put it together, and it I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's kind of behind the gear. Like, it's not very long, a couple minutes. And
and I'll put that here in the description too, so people can kind of check that out as well. It's a great video.
It's just kind of one of those inspirational kind of videos that was clipped together and added music and added sound effects and made me look cooler than I am for sure. But it was fun, and it did, in the end, it kind of gives you, it's humbling for me to be in something like that, and almost get, like my wife, she's like, every time she watches it, she's like, it gives me goosebumps. It really captured, they did a good job of really capturing the work that went into this thing, and the ups and downs. And I mean, it was 2 years of, I remember the first one of these that I was serviceable, I actually took on that Mexico hunt that I mentioned with Ranella and that crew, and I showed it all to him, like, look what I made. And and it was so ugly and like rudimentary, and first try, and they're all like, oh, that's great, good luck with that, and
Nice job, Paul.
Yeah. Yep, that's how I felt. And it turned into something that I am proud of. And like I said, I don't think it's a Me Too product. I feel like it's a it's a bino harness. It holds your binoculars, but it has so many different features on it than what were on the market before, and some features that we pulled from other areas, and the tactical side, and wanted to kind of blend all that together and just make it the most useful, functional, modular harness on the market. And I think we've done that.
I think you did. And I wanted to kind of point out a couple other features with it too. One thing that I love is having like this pocket too, and being able to like have a spot for your phone, because I've used these for multiple times out on the property in various hunts. And too, like you said, there's like the adaptability and being able to take like the wings on and off, and being able to attach different pouches and things on there has been monumental. But there's just so much design, and there's definitely places for those who aren't looking but are listening. There's zipper pouches and that are built into this. There's, areas on the side you can put stuff, so you don't even have to necessarily have the wings if you're trying to keep it, tight. But if you want to have those extra accessories too. And I find that, very much useful with the chest rig. And I guess before we get into that too, I did want to point out too that the new harnesses that you have too will work on the earlier version of the Bino harness, correct?
Yep. Yeah, we sell those airframe harnesses separately because there were a number of people who still, feel the same way that originally, like, I don't want magnets. And, if you have a pacemaker, something like
Right,
that,
right.
obviously you want to stay away from them. And so we included the extra buckle so you can just convert your old harness or, even the current Pro M, if you buy those, we're still selling them, to that new airframe harness because it is such an upgrade with the breathability and everything like that. We changed the bino hangers even to make those more low profile so they fit inside that closing lid a little better. Less hardware, more flexible. Yeah, a lot of kind of whole new system. He's talked about it being like the Gen 2 upgrade, but it's really, we kind of run them. We think them as like running in parallel. They aren't necessarily even the same product. It's a completely different line that,
Oh yeah.
both bino harnesses, but definitely different. I wouldn't even say different applications.
Just a different
Completely.
design. It is a different element. I mean, it really
Yes,
is.
yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Whereas, like jumping, like you said, into that Gen 2 chest rig, it is very similar. And we updated, really the big updates on that is that full molly on the front, which gave you a little more capability to do a dual column molly pouch. Before, I just had single column on there, so you were kind of limited on what you could attach to the front. We put use that same mesh on the back so that there's a pocket similar to the bino harness on the back, and then we added the side loops so that you could use the wings on those.
Yeah.
The previous model didn't have those. It's funny, just yesterday we discovered that if you use a belt and attach those there, it makes a killer little, almost like a fanny pack for fishing. That with those wings, you can have the chest rig, a water bottle, and a phone pouch or whatever on there. And it just, if you didn't want it up on your chest and wanted to spin that around behind you and fish, it actually works really well. So
That's great. What if you have everything up front? You might be top heavy. You got to be careful. So maybe put it
yeah,
in the back and bounce
yep,
yourself out, right?
yep, absolutely. But yeah, it's been, and then that chest rig, like I said, is obviously an evolution. We phased out the old one and phased that one in. That one does come with that new upgraded harness as well. And it just kind of a whole new step up in that chest rig. And trying to come out, we'll have a tactical kit coming out, so it's all Velcro lined in that chest rig. So we have a turkey kit, a waterfowl kit, fishing kit. We have a couple standalone pieces, an optics pad if you have huge binos or a camera you're carrying in there. It's just a padded insert that Velcros in. We've got a bino bucket, so if you have smaller, like 10 by 42 and smaller binos, you can just use that as your bino harness if you don't mind the zipper closure, which, a lot of people is fine. And what else do we have that goes in there? We will be coming out with a tactical kit that's specifically designed, some elastic internal like mag pouches, like we'll have a pistol mag, ACIS mag holder. We see a lot of guys using it for like shooting competitions. So there'll be a Velcro in like dope card holder for having a hard dope. And then, it can come out, you can just slide that out and Velcro it to shooting mat or whatever you want, and still maintains Velcro on the front behind the window, so you don't lose the real estate. And then we'll have Velcro in molly adapters. So if you did want to put any sort of molly adaptable pouch inside the chest rig, you just Velcro that in, and creates a molly platform to attach other pouches on the inside.
Dude,
So
that's some great. And then you also have another development that's coming in soon with
yes,
if you want to talk about that right now with the new chest rig and
so this, I believe, Jen I should have conferred with her before coming here. I believe these will be launching next month. But this is a waterproof version, so we're using we're saying weatherproof because
Yep.
you know, there's not a hazmat zipper and there
Right.
are spaces.
There's the difference there and what
Yep.
you're showing there, right?
Yep,
So this
exactly.
is,
So this is
yep.
the water resistant zipper.
Mhm.
Works really well, keeps out the water, and then the actual hull. Otherwise, functionally it's the same, but see if I can find an internal spot. The inside is made with this coated X-Pack, the same X-Pack that's in that rifle bag behind you.
Yeah.
So that the material itself is waterproof as well. So it's the laminated X-Pack reinforced with Kevlar, super durable stuff. But for those instances where you might want to use that, you know, and have a little more water resistance. And we're doing this in the solid color. And then we're going to be coming out with versions that we're using the First Light camos specifically for duck hunters. So we'll have this as well as their new timber camo pattern that will be, again, same functionally as far as layout. Everything's the same as the chest rig you have in your hand, except waterproof zippers. This is that TPU fabric that is, you know, rubberized, waterproof material. And it's kind of just because of the nature of that fabric, this one's a little more structured. There's
Mhm.
not any more padding or anything built into it. It's just the fabric itself is stiffer. So, but it works great for like, especially waterfowlers. You've got, you know, a box of shotgun shells in there. It definitely doesn't sag as much as standard Cordura would if you were to load it up that heavy. And then on top of that, you know, we're doing a waterproof version of the E4, which is a pouch that's honestly, I have these on all the belts, all the packs I have, because it's just kind of a general purpose pouch, but we wanted to have a waterproof version of this to attach to the front of both of these. So in those, you know, have 4 columns of MOLLE on the back that attach right there, give you a little extra storage up front.
Yeah.
Fishing, I use them for like streamer boxes or
Mhm.
a phone or, you know, whatever you want to have there. But these have the same. I mean, the E4 is available now. The waterproof version will be available when these come out next month, and you know those have the same Velcro interior, so you can add accessories in there. I find myself like hunting season, I have one on my belt, and I put in a 5-round cartridge holder in there with that new. Well, I guess with my Cross or my Seekins, they have box mags that fit well in the little ACIS mag holders, and then it's got a little tweave up here. You can put, you know, all sorts of stuff from ear pro to, you know, whatever you want to happen to stow in there and have a little organization. So all that stuff's coming, like I said, in July, I hope, knock on wood.
That's great, man. I mean, I'm definitely going to be checking out that. I love that, you know, the weatherproof version of what you're talking about, with any kind of thing you're bringing out there, and especially, you know, if you got something that, you know, your optics and things that, you know, you may have some, you know, range finders or things too. You just want to make sure you're keeping, you know, anything electronic dry. And, you know, I kind of wanted to run back to the idea of like your chest rig and really kind of talk about some of the things you can kind of put in them, and the different, like the turkey kit is something that I have been using. Being able to have your striker, you know, I've got here, you know, one of the Phelps, like it's one of the newer versions
Oh yeah, yeah,
of his, and which has worked very well this last
yeah,
season. But being able to have your mouth calls and such in there, as well as being able to have, you know, a spot for your ammo, to keep it from juggling around. And you know, the wings, that has been able to be great, because I put this on there, and I forget
hmm
exactly what is this, the
nav pouch. That's the
nav pouch.
nav pouch. Yep.
And you know, and I'm using that there too for, you know, an extra little call. I know you can kind of put these on the bottom
hmm
of your of your shotgun as well too, and there's various versions of these there too. I don't even remember what brand it was. I just grabbed that to kind of have various calls, because I had remember hearing from this turkey caller who's like, you know, if you have multiple calls, you
Yep.
can make it sound like multiple turkeys. And you know, I was like, good point. But being able to have that wing pouch and have that set up on the side, before I had everything kind of, you know, on the front of
Yep.
that, and it was bulky, and it was, you know, you having your shotgun, it's like I'd inevitably, you know, hit it, and you know, the wood call would go off and stuff, and
Yep.
sometimes it'd be helpful, you know,
Yep.
but
Yep.
but being able to have that and have that modular system to be able to, you know, some days I wouldn't want to take all the calls out there with me, and you know, maybe not have that nav pouch on the side. But I love interoperability that these systems allow, and being able to customize it for whatever you want. Because turkey season ends, maybe I don't need the wing. I need something a little tighter. If I'm, fishing for bass, I don't want to have a big tackle box with me. I can have, just a few different lures or things that I have. Super, super versatile. And, I've started using this too, because, I'm doing some work now with Spartan Precision Equipment. Recently did an interview with Rob Gearing, and, for his Javelin bipod, I was curious about how you guys had come to working together. And, I finally saw a picture that had the different versions that you
Oh
had kind of
yes.
made throughout. And I thought that was kind of a neat thing too, in that development. But this is great too. For those who don't know, being able to have this is kind of a, also modularity of being able to have, on the bottom of your stock, having just kind of the female adapter, or Picatinny for, your ARs, whatever it is, and being able to kind of take this on and off, but having this in such an easy carryable thing. I was kind of curious if you could walk us through about the Aspis and how that design came to be as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, Rob and we met at one of the sportsman show or something in Salt Lake, and, we've kind of stayed in touch. And, he's a wild, guy that shows up and, is full of energy and just, a blast to be around. And we just kind of had maintained friends, being friends, and he liked the gear I was making, and really didn't have any specific things. We had our showroom here. He had sent us a couple of those Javelin bipods to use and try. And we've, sometimes we have, the early versions before they're out, and, just kind of give feedback and really just kind of work. Kind of like I described SIG before. We don't have anything formal, just, we're friends and like to work together and help each other out where we can. And the one thing with that Javelin was, like, it's an expensive bipod and I didn't want to lose it. And they made one that one of their partners made overseas, and it works good on their early versions, or for their, I can't remember the names, all the legs, but the tack legs where it has that ratchet in there, they were so tight that it was, just pulling it out was almost a little, it would extend the legs for you, even if you were trying to be quiet. And I wanted something that I could molly on right under my bino harness and just have right there or on my belt. And so he and I kind of worked together to figure out a way. I told him, I was like, I'd like to make a pouch for this that, and sell it. And he kind of gave me the feedback he'd gotten from his customers on what he already had and what he'd like to see. And you saw the picture with a couple different versions of it, and came up with this design, sent it to him, and he was like, "This is ridiculous! Like, it's perfect. You've nailed it. It worked great." To the point, where he's ordering a pile of them himself to sell with bipods, and through his dealers in the UK, and I don't even know where they're all at now, but
Yeah, all through Europe, sure.
yeah. So it's been one of those just kind of easy accidental partnerships that just happen because I consider myself a decent guy, willing to work with people, and he is just one of those super friendly, fantastic people and a good guy to know too. In fact, he took us. He's the one we went on that trip to Scotland. Did a hunting trip. It wouldn't have happened if he hadn't invited us along, and it was just a blast. So just kind of one of those natural, accidental partnerships, I guess. Nothing really formal, and which is kind of how this company started and has worked throughout the years. And like I said, that's one of the pros and cons of being involved in the bigger corporation. Is they're like, well, we have a partnership with this company, they're a competitor to that company, so I'm like, yeah, but we're friends. So
Yeah,
so there's kind of those pros and cons, but Javelin was not one of those, and he actually has already worked with MeatEater, and
right.
they sold the Javelin bipod on, I think they still do, on the site. So it was, the relationship already existed, and it was one of those that, because of his relationship with MeatEater, it just made it super easy in that respect.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nothing crazy, but that's one of those fun projects and fun collaborations that that, I'd like to do more of, and with him, and, potentially with other companies. But Rob's such a good guy to work with, and that it's really been fun.
Yeah, no, I am very excited. We just started kind of doing a little bit of work together too. He just sent me the Sentinel to go and do some, and I'm starting to kind of do a little bit more outdoor filming. Kind of my buddy and I have a thing called BD2 Cooks, and we're going to be doing a lot of wild game. This last year, we interviewed a lot of wild game chefs and talked with them, and kind of now we're going to be implementing a lot of the different recipes. Jesse Griffith, some other friends of ours that have put some stuff out, and kind of we're going to take that and, hey, we've taken the animal, we filmed it, and now we're going to cook it, and kind of, cradle to grave as far as that's concerned. And using that tripod and kind of, some of the other gear, and your gear will be actually featuring a lot of that stuff too on,
Nice.
on that, and kind of because when I find something that I stick with, and I love this product, I love the bino harness, I love the chest rig, and I'm not going to go and try to reinvent the wheel here and look for something else better. That this
Right.
serves every single thing I need and more than I even had originally thought. And as the new designs are coming out, I'm definitely, now I'm like, okay, what's that next one? Oh, you got weatherproof? Oh, okay. Here you go. Here, Paul.
Yep.
Here's
Yep.
Jen. Take my
And
money.
that's been the fun part. And that, why we like having a showroom here is that we get a lot of customers come in and going to the shows. You guys will be aware of the product and know that, oh, we're known for making a bino harness, but we make so much more. And, having people come in and like, oh, holy crap, I didn't know all of this stuff, and this works with that, and this work, and you're like, oh man, I'm gonna, people are kind of blown away sometimes when, and even, our CS guys, we have to go do trainings, be like, okay, we need to spend 2 days going over this because it can be put together in so many different ways. And oftentimes customers come to us with like, hey, here's what I did. I'm like, I didn't even think of that. Great idea. And we can then pass that on to, other customers. And, again, just trying to make it, everything I've done, I just try and make it modular and useful. And to repeat myself, like, you as the customer should be able to set this up exactly how you want it. I shouldn't be telling you how you should be carrying your gear. I have suggestions on how I do it and what works for me, but that may not work for you. And I want you to be able to find what does and specifically set it up exactly how you want it. And if that changes year to year or throughout the years, or depending on what you're doing, I want you to be able to switch it up and make it work for everything. So that's kind of how I look at things that I have made over the years.
Oh boy, I'm excited. I just got this tripod in the mail from Spartan Precision Equipment. This is their Sentinel tripod, which is so light, I forgot that I was even holding it. This thing is amazing. These carbon fiber legs, super light. It's got, one of their classic adapters here on the top here. This is what you'll see on the Davros Pro head as well. This is their, the head is, you can kind of check it out now. This will go with all the bottoms of all the optics and, the adapters that are bottom of the stocks on your rifles. I know I'm going to be using this for multiple different, functions. I'm going to take this in the field with me. Let's say I see a hog, man, I'm putting the adapter, it's on the bottom of my stock on my rifle, and I'm taking a shot, and I'm going to go ahead and get some bacon in the freezer for the family. Also, if I'm out there and I see something cool, some neat hawks or, some white-tailed deer running around and everything, I'm going to go ahead and grab my camera, which has an adapter on the bottom for their heavy-duty adapters. I'm going to throw it on here, and I'm going to get a real steady, awesome, clear shot on video and for photography. As well, if I'm out glassing somewhere and I need something steady that's lightweight to take in the field with me, I'm taking this. I can be using it for my spotting scope or for my binoculars. Look, whatever you need, Spartan Precision Equipment has exactly the thing for you for out in the field. Go to havilandbipod.com and check out their awesome line of products. I really, really think that you're going to enjoy it. I know I will. So yes, the Sentinel tripod. Thank you so much, Spartan, for sending this. I can't wait to be using this on future hunts, filming for the upcoming TV show. Wait, upcoming TV show? Spoiler alert, BDT Cooks this fall. Stay tuned. Me and Matthew Mitchell, we got some things coming your way. Hunting and cooking. Wild game at its best. And I've heard you also talk about, like, there's times you've seen pictures or videos, even running out someone in the field, and it's like, okay, that strap needs to do this, and it'll be more comfortable. But
Yeah,
as far as
yeah.
that adaptability, it's good to pass that on.
Yeah, I try and pass on where, the old bino harness, the Pro M, had that elastic bungee, and that was the thing that like drove me crazy when, there's a tab for you to tuck the tag ends in and hide it and make it look pretty. And it doesn't functionally change much, but you know, I'd run into people in the woods and be like, hey,
You're
come
like,
here.
hey, come here.
And
Yeah.
yeah, let me tuck that away. And my wife would be like, you got to stop touching people. And I'm like, well, I just had to fix it. So luckily around here, most people, Bozeman's small enough that if they're already wearing FHF, they probably know that I'm not some rando,
Yeah, I
walking
can
up.
just imagine, who is this guy?
I know.
I don't know. The
Um,
stories that get told
I know.
later on.
I ran into a guy on the trail this last weekend. Actually, we are doing a rip up one of the trailheads, just kind of putting some weight on and getting some miles under our feet, and ran into a guy, probably a guy and his son, and he's wearing FHF, and he walks by him. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I was just like, "Hey, I like your harness," and he looked at me like, "Okay, that's a weird thing to say," and just kept walking. But I don't know. Maybe he knew I was or not. Who knows? But yeah, it's fun being in an outdoor town like this. Where we used to go to TAC and the Total Archery Challenge in Big Sky, and it's like 80% of the people there, because it's hometown, we're all wearing stuff I made or designed, and it's like surreal sort of, because this is not where I expected to be, and never even necessarily planned to be, just kind of accidentally ended up in the position I'm in. And if you'd have told me 10 years ago I'd be having dinner at Ranella's house or something, I'd be like, you're insane. I don't even hardly hunt. And I don't know. It's been a fun journey for sure.
Well, you make some amazing stuff, man. And before we kind of get off the topic of gear, there was one other
Yeah.
one that there are two actually, that I wanted to kind of go after. And one was like these bags
Oh
here,
yeah.
man. These are the ultralight synergy bags here, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you can talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think maybe they may be self-explanatory with what the fact that you can kind of see them and that they're super lightweight, but how did the design of these come about? And as far as that need that you kind of fulfilled with these.
So we had done synergy bags, the non-ultralight version out of Cordura a while back, and I did those in a way that a lot of companies have just little organizer bags, but those were I probably have a problem where I like to be organized, and I wanted two of one size bag to fit into the next size of bag. So their size so that two smalls fit in a medium, two mediums fit in a large, and so on. And we did those out of Cordura. They're kind of heavy, for what they are, but I have them all over my truck, and I carry everything from snacks to toiletries, and the bigger ones I have rain gear in. I have an extra pair of waders in my truck in case I find a fishing hole that I wasn't planning to be at. And so I just carry all sorts of stuff in them, and those Cordura ones are great. But I always found myself, and I had made myself a few over the years out of lighter sil poly nylons and different things, just backpacking, trying to cut weight where I can. And I found myself backpacking always going back to the sil nylon ones, because they were lighter and they were handier, and but they weren't as durable as the Cordura was. And so depending on what you're putting into them, rubbing in your pack, you wear holes. And so I'm like, and you couldn't see what's in them. Of course I make everything in the similar colors, and like pull three of them out of the bag, trying to figure out which one's which.
Sure.
And this Dyneema, I wanted something I could see through. And it's translucent enough. You can tell what's in the bag. And the zipper on that weighs more than the rest of the bag.
Right.
And it's, the Dyneema material by itself is waterproof. And, so you get that water resistance of having, we're not using the waterproof zippers on those, mostly because of the weight, though they weigh more, and the cost of the waterproof zipper is significant. It's like 4 times a normal zipper. So Dyneema is already kind of an expensive fabric, and we didn't want to make those bags so expensive that customers wouldn't want to invest in them. But that Dyneema is super tough. Like I've never worn through one. As you can tell, when you pick those up, they're crackly at first. It's like newspaper though. Like as you use them,
Yep.
they kind of break in. And I have some that I've been using for 2 or 3 years now. In fact, this is a design that was done. You talked about the calendar of events. That design's been done for years and ready to go, but Dyneema wasn't available. And so we waited over a year for there to be bulk supply of Dyneema so that we could actually even put them into production. So that's one of those things that just like, we did a long time ago. And those we'd made flatter, again, to help with that material so light, trying to sew a circle in that, takes, I don't even know how to describe it. It'd be like, yeah, it's not as easy to sew a circle in that ultralight fabric as Cordura that kind of holds its shape.
Sure.
And again, the labor time to sew those, we wanted to keep down so that customers could invest in that bag. And so we just did a flat gusseted bag because they actually billow out a lot more than you can tell by looking at them when they're flat. And you can actually get quite a bit in those. And
oh yeah. I use these for first aid. I have more than what I need, and I thought I'd have to use the bigger bag, and it turns out I use the medium for everything I need to, keep with me. And you could even use a smaller if it's a quick little day trip there's so many uses for pouches. And that's a great thing because I can't tell you one from the other that I have, but being able to have like translucent and be a quick view, that's that, grab it, put it in, it saves some time.
Yeah. I got them all over the place and filled with stuff and, transferring from pack to pack. And it's been one of those things that people like to be organized. And my wife told me I probably should just carry less shit so I don't have to be as organized, but I gotta be prepared. So
have
a little more
carry
stuff.
less stuff. No,
I know. Yeah.
You bring the wing system, bring more,
Yes. Yeah. Yep. You can definitely overdo it. And that's what's funny too, is this whole system, we have all this ability to mount stuff. I actually saw a story on Instagram the other day, one of our customers, and my wife's like, ooh, don't share that one because he was super excited about it. He has everything he would ever need. Like he probably doesn't need to carry a backpack, but he's got pouches stacked on pouches, and it's like I've seen military memes or Molly. They just keep building out, and that's
a fire extinguisher.
Right? Yeah. And I did that once at a show, and I learned not to do that. Where I had one mannequin, we had like a little tiny spot, and I was like, I want to show all the stuff we make, so let's just attach everything to one mannequin and it'll show the versatility of it. Well, people from a distance are like, that's ridiculous, and then just keep walking. I'm like, yeah, might have been an overkill. So you could build it out to an overkill, or you can shred it down to nothing. And it's funny because like I'll get customers, and I'm not answering a lot of CS anymore. I do still hop on socials and try and answer DMs here and there, and but you'll get customers like, I'm looking for this, and I don't want to have to buy an extra pouch. I want this sewn into the front. I want my rangefinder pouch sewn on because I never take it off. And I would much rather send you to Alaska Guide Creation and say, you know what, they already make that. Or one of the other companies, and say, if that's what you're looking for and that's what you're going to be happy with, I'd rather send you to them so that you're happy than have you buy my stuff, buy a pouch that you say you're never going to take off, and then be unhappy with having to buy that pouch and tell all your friends how unhappy you are with our product. I'd rather, it makes more sense to me to say, if you want something that I don't make and someone else already does a good job of it, by all means, go buy theirs. And, if you want something else, hopefully you come back and we'll be interested in looking at something I've made in the past. So, I send people to other companies fairly frequently if they're after something that isn't something that was the goal of the product I made, or, is going to fit their hunting style better, then it makes more sense to just get them exactly what they want, even if it's not something I make.
That's a great point, man. I mean, you're not going to have everything for everybody, but you're covering so many bases and the modularity that you're probably going to tick most boxes for people. But being able to give that advice and make sure that at the end of the day they have what they want, that also speaks to who you are and the character of your company and your integrity too.
Hmm.
Because if you tell me that and I'm like, wow, okay, you know what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to come check out your website and find out those other things that I need from you, and I'm going to
Hmm.
buy them from you as a customer, because that's something that I'm like, you've actually steered me in the right direction for what it is that niche need or whatever it may be.
Yep.
And I think that's a really great thing to be able to do. And it's like someone asks you a question, I don't know the answer. However, let me get it for you, instead of just kind of BS and
Yeah.
BS and
Making
stuff. And
something
it's
up.
like, yeah, it's like, and that same thing. Yeah, we don't make that exact thing. Here it is, go there. And I'm sure that it doesn't happen often because of what you have and all the different uses of FHF gear that, I'm sure it's not
Yep.
something that every day go there, but
Right. Yeah. I
but
mean,
in those few instances.
I do try and, solve people's problems for them. And,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's funny because we'll get people in the shop and be like, I need this. I'm like, well, one bar tack and one stitch line, I will make this for you. And, I'll go in the back and come out 5 minutes later and say, there's what you need. I'm not saying everybody should do that because I don't have that much time, but,
Right.
but, it is nice to be able to do that and have that ability, in-house here. And, I'm sure not every business owner would agree with me. I should never send customers to, a competitor, but at the end of the day, I believe as a consumer myself, I'd rather be steered the direction of exactly what I want than be force fed something that might work for what I want.
Yeah. And
Like I said,
like you said too, it's like the negative part. If someone doesn't have exactly what they need and it's like it only kind of half-ass works for them, that's not going to turn well on the
Mhm.
end when they're giving a review or something like that. And it's
Yep,
that's important, and I think it's very important.
yep, absolutely.
Um, you kind of mentioned this because it's in the background here, and I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get this whole thing in the shot. Oh, I kind of can if I had an angle.
Yeah,
Tell me about your, because there's a bunch of really wonderful things that come from these rifle cases. And one of the things that I found that I really love about them is the ability that you've had them that they will fit inside hard cases for travel and things too, which is phenomenal. But there's so much to talk about with these, and I'd like to have you start, and if there's anything I'll jump in if there's anything
yeah,
of points that I have. But why don't we just go ahead, and this one I think is the 42 that I have
yeah,
here in front of me.
yeah. That's
But
what it looks like.
you have three different sizes, right?
I do. Yeah, we've got the third. In fact, I didn't set these here on purpose, but this color will be coming eventually. I don't know when. This is a prototype I made, but this is a 36, so it's kind of sized for AR platforms. I carry my Sig Cross with the folded stock in there a lot.
Mhm.
And then we have the 42 that you have, and then we have the 50, which is this guy back here, and it's for your standard hunting rifles. And I have a giant shotgun that doesn't quite fit in there, but if you have even my Seekins with the suppressor on it fits in there, especially if I can angle a little bit. So,
Right.
yeah, to start out with, like you said, size to fit in kind of the most common hard cases so that you can travel with it. And kind of, I just take a piece of foam out, set it in there. In some cases, depending on the thickness of that hard case, I'll take 2 pieces of foam out. Meant to be super slick, so there's not a lot of crap hanging off of it to catch on stuff if you're sliding it in and out under boat gunnels, or in and out of a plane, out of my truck, the back seat. I can just or bed of the truck between gear. I don't know if you've ever had those cases with they've got 15 shoulder straps and handles everywhere that catch on everything. We wanted to keep it super slick. It has the ability, if you want to put a shoulder strap on it, you can. I can't think of a time, well, other than transporting to the range and stuff, I really haven't used the shoulder strap. Other than what I've found, it works really well, especially on the short one, is storing this vertically behind my seat of my truck. And that's been super handy. I'll just kind of run this over the back seat of the truck and store it vertically. It comes with a vehicle attachment kit. This one has grass on it. We might have shot it a little bit. These buckles up here, you can kind of see, but they're removable, and you can mount those really anywhere on the molly. You could mount them horizontally on the daisy chain. I mean, this is molly spacing on the other side as well. You could mount them however you want and move them around. And then it comes with a whole kit that you can attach and hang these. And I like all of hunting season, that 50-inch hangs across the back seat of my truck, so that I can get, it keeps the seat clear. And, if you're like me, you have crap in your backpack and coat you shed and, hats and gloves and crap all over your back seat. This is where I get cluttered and try and be organized by having more bags, but it doesn't always work. But has the ability to mount there. And then we actually have additional vehicle attachment kits. So with 4 buckles, I can pull that off and attach it to a side-by-side or 4-wheeler or whatever. Or, if my kids are jumping in the back seat, I'm taking them to school, I can, with 4 buckles, just take that out, keep it at home. And then, it's not like you have this thing permanently mounted to the back seat that's going to take you, an hour to weave buckles around and do that stuff. So the actual attachments to my truck are still in there, even though it's not hunting season here anymore. But I can, if I head to the range, I can literally just 4 buckles and go. The inside of it is all Velcro lined. Well, before I get to the inside, each side we put 4 zippers on here. So depending on where that's hanging in your truck, I don't know if you've ever done this with another rifle case, like, oh, the opening's on the other side, and you don't want to, go around your truck to do it. So you can set these zippers up so you have access here, but at the same time, access it from the other side. So depending on which side you've got, access to or want to have access to, I usually store the butt end facing my driver's side, and so I can just pull it right out. But if you have a passenger or 2 of these hanging in your truck and want to face them opposite directions, you can. Or I don't recommend people do it by the barrel, but you could. On the inside of this, because it'll lay flat with these zippers, it's got super heavy duty marine grade foam in it that's 1 inch thick, so it floats. We floated 40 pounds of weight plus my rifle on the 50-inch case, and it stayed up. Same waterproof fabric I described on the chest rig, so it's that Kevlar reinforced X-Pack, waterproof zippers. Again, we're calling these kind of weather resistant just because of the zippers. They're not like Yeti zippers or hazmat zippers. These are if I open this up, these are the Velcro, or I'm sorry, the vehicle attachment kits. The inside, this one actually doesn't have one in it. There's a Velcro strip. There's 2 of them that are spaced like molly. And so it's Velcro with basically molly webbing on the front of it that Velcro right into here. And you can place those wherever you want. Comes with a strap so you can secure a weapon in there, on a bumpy road or whatever. If you have a breakdown shotgun or whatever, you can secure it so they're not bumping into each other. But I like to leave mine slick so that I can just pull it out and go. And it's not catching on anything on the inside. There's, super smooth. We found that dope card kit we're coming out with. If you lay this down as a mat, you can just Velcro that right to the front. The other thing I've done is using those instead of using them as tie downs, I'll space them 1 inch apart and actually use them to hold mag pouches or additional organization. Like I keep my suppressor paperwork and extra box of ammo or whatever handy right in there.
Sure.
It does have the molly on the outside, so you could mount those pouches on the outside as well. But, if you're trying to keep it slick, then, it kind of defeats that purpose. There is a, external pocket on the outside for small stuff. I mean, I can get a box of ammo and mags in there pretty easily as well. But I think that kind of covers it. Heavy duty handles, both, in the center. This webbing comes all the way down to the bottom. They're not going to tear out of the seam. And then same big kind of drag handle style handles on all 4 ends of the bag, both ends of the bag on both sides. So I don't know, did I miss anything?
I think that's, that it's so funny when you mentioned like being able to kind of fold it out and have like the shooting pad. That blew my mind when I saw that video. Like, cause I've had shooting bags before that, you know, that can open up like that too. And I got this one and, you know, it's kind of looking at, there's a video you have, and I'll include the link in there too about how you put it up in the back seat of your truck. And
Hmm.
literally, I think that thing was like a minute and a half long. Like it's
Yeah, yeah.
not, it doesn't take long to do it. And it was,
No.
it's a step-by-step so for those who buy that, you know, definitely check out that video and kind of save yourself some time, because it really simplifies it out and shows you exactly what to do in the best way. And that's brilliant. I have, you know, there was, I forgot even what company it was. I bought one for the back of our side by side when we're driving
Hmm.
around. We have Polaris Ranger, and in the back it has an extra seat and the very back, and I had one there so I could just go ahead and get to it easily. And the I mean, over time, it's like they're weather resistant zippers, but they're not. It's some cheap,
Yep.
you know, knockoff company, but it just happened to fit right, and I just needed something that day, so ordered it. But I'm going to be using that and having that tied on there, and being able to, you know, like when I saw that you had like that the 4 zipper operation there too, just to be able to have it, you know, and I'm not grabbing something from the barrel, but if I just want to get into something and grab, you know, a box of ammo or whatever from the
Yep.
middle pouch, it's huge. And then you're not having to open up the whole thing. That was a really cool design element. But I'll leave the that how-to video that you did there, because that was, you know, that one was great to see how to mount that. Made it a lot quicker for me, and it is detachable, like you said too. You got the kids in the car, yeah, they don't have to be leaning up like that when you're riding in the back
Yep.
seat. So
Well,
it's a good move there.
and this is one of those products that like is it's funny because the big 50, we weren't sure in market research, you know, these short rifle cases, the little 36 inchers, you know, if you look at Amazon, for example, you know, they're the number one selling rifle case on Amazon is a 36-inch case, which surprised me. But so we did quite a few of those. But our 50 inches, you know, for I think the market we're in and kind of the idea of who we're selling to, those 50 inchers sold out more quickly than we expected. And I think it's one of those products that once people got their hands on it, and you know, taking it to shows and different things, it's, you know, you can buy a $8 rifle case from Amazon or, you know, your local hardware store that's a floppy, you know, piece of felt with a zipper on it. And this is one of those things I don't think people recognize what it is until they get their hands on it. And you know, it's an investment for sure. But I think it's one of those things that floats, water resistant, I'll call it. Um, the test we did where I literally took we have a gym next door, so I took weights from the gym and, you know, put weights on there one at a time, plus a rifle in there, and then we tried to have a dog retrieve it to make it funny. And you know, after probably 15 minutes of playing in the water with this thing, and eventually putting enough weight on it that it was sinking pretty low in the water, but still floating. You know, I took it out and I opened up the zippers and probably had a cup, half a cup of water in there. But if you're the guy who's, you know, canoeing somewhere, rafting somewhere and wants to keep water out, unless you're tying it to the outside of your raft and, you know, keeping it submerged for your trip,
It's not an anchor, right?
it's right. It's gonna keep your weapon safe. And if you do have an accident, you drop it in the water off a plane, float plane, or a boat, you're gonna have it's gonna be very easy to pick it up and it's not gonna be like, uh-oh, you know,
Yeah.
need to hire a diver to go find my rifle. But you know, that 1 inch foam is super heavy duty. It floats real high. I mean, it's actually the same foam you use for you know, life preservers. And, you know, I mean, it's relatively dense foam, doesn't absorb water. And it just, you know, it holds its structure, and just picking it up, you're like, I've had multiple customers, you know, they come in like, well, is that thing really worth, you know, it's a rifle case. Is it? And buy it at Walmart for, you know, a few dollars, and they get their hands on it, like, oh, this is not a run-of-the-mill rifle case. So it's been the challenge, I guess, is having customers understand what it is versus, you know, what they see on the racks at Walmart. So
Well, that's a big thing too. I mean, you know, especially Look, if you're on a budget and you're trying to do things and you're going to buy, someone's going to buy that $8 or $10, case or, gun sleeve or whatever. When you start to realize, the average life of something like that, or a rifle, it could be a lifetime rifle. Well, yeah, you could buy this $300 one, which might not give you the right amount of precision, but as you get into understanding like, oh, maybe that thing that costs 3 times as much, averaged out, you're really not going to be spending that much more per year on something that's going to last a long time. And, I think, maybe it's the maturity. Some may question if I have maturity, but the idea that, as I've grown and wanting to have more precision things, I've wanted to have stuff that is high quality, that it is an investment, but over time that, okay, this may be $50 more, $100 more here, but really over time it's pennies, really. And having something that you can rely on in the field that's not going to fail, something that will have true water resistant, not just something that's water resistant question mark. No, this is, it's going to keep your gear safe. And when you start to spend money on high quality gear, or even if it's just something, maybe it's an old rifle that's your great granddad's or something like that, it might not be the highest quality compared to what it is out there these days, but you want it protected and you want to have the right things. And I think your gear all speaks to that. It's something that I would trust anything that I own, and putting it in one of these rifle cases. And any kind of binoculars, I know that I'm going to put them in and they're going to be safe. Something's not going to fail. There's no stitching that I feel is questionable. It's all high quality stuff. And so, for anybody who maybe looks at these kinds of things, these products, and just in general, and sees a price tag that maybe more than they maybe think about, it's like, think about averaging that out over 5 years. Is that extra X amount of dollars going to be a difference? No, it's not. It's actually, it's worth it. You're not going to have to replace it in a year or two, So
and that cost of replacement. Do you want to buy one every year, or one every couple of years, or have one that's going to last a lifetime? And plus, you're already investing. These guys will come in, with $2,800 binoculars and be like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want to spend $100 on a bino harness." I'm like, you protect it how you want, but if you want protection that's going to keep, your stuff good, then you're going to want to look at something that's high quality as well to put it in. And the rifle case, I think, fits into that category as well.
Yeah, no. And I know one of the cool things is like you said, it's been sold out. If you go to your website, you can go ahead and add to be notified when if there's something that sells out, add for that notification, and you're going to get an email when it is. I'm still waiting on my 50-inch email, but I'm excited to get that, because this one works great for a lot of the things I do in the rifles. And the kid's 22 and some different things that are a little smaller, I'm sure work well with 36 as well. But definitely having that ability and that adaptability is something you've sized that right to fit in those hard cases. That's a game changer for me, because I can be able to take the hard case when I get to the ranch, put that underneath the bed or in the corner and closet, whatever it is. And then I can have that in the back of my truck, or back to side by side or something like that. It's not something bulky and big snapping. I can get it out quietly. It's a game changer, man. I really love the design of it. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's one of those things that has been good. It's designed kind of around a single rifle, but I get, depending on the rifle, you can definitely, I was carrying 2 in it here this last weekend. So it depends what your chassis looks like and your turrets and all that stuff, but you put them in there right, you can definitely get 2 in. So it's been good.
Hey everybody, just wanted to take a moment to tell you about Sharing the Land. For those unfamiliar, Sharing the Land is an initiative that was brought together by Doug Duran to bring land access seekers and landowners together to form these unions to be able to better benefit the property. Very conservational minded, but it's also about getting people out there and sharing these experiences out on these properties and having them work in a more uniformed way to better benefit the property and the habitat. My company, Map My Ranch, which I work with Colin Williams, we make maps for people's properties all around the country, right? And one of the things that we do to be a part of this organization is we offer to make maps for the landowners. So if you sign up as a landowner, we're going to go ahead and put together a map for you, which shows your property, your boundary, and maybe any of the things that you want to have labeled. Maybe it's certain overlooks, or maybe it's certain, fencing areas where you're going to have this type of, agricultural work done, or maybe you're going ahead and growing this. Maybe these are some native seeds that you're focusing on. Whatever it is that you want to go ahead and have mapped, we're going to do that for you. That's a part of our contribution. We are a very proud sponsor of Sharing the Land, and will be for a long time. Love working with Doug. Wonderful, wonderful man. And this is a wonderful project. I highly suggest you guys go check it out. And there's a whole team of sponsors and partners that are a part of this that are just top notch. Go check out sharingtheland.com, and also go check out dougduran.com to learn more about all the wonderful things he's doing. And I kind of wanted to switch gears the last part of the interview and ask you some questions that are kind of just more personal based.
Okay.
You mentioned as far as hunting elk and stuff too. I was curious, do you have some favorite animals that you love getting out after? And I know you're doing a lot of fishing, you and Jen. I've seen a lot of posts of some wonderful, fishing spots you guys hit up and catching some fish. But what are some of your favorite things to go out in the outdoors and fish and hunt for? Just kind of tell me a little bit about that.
Pretty simple. I to be honest, my passion is still elk. I just love being out in the mountains and elk screaming and that time of year in September, and everything about it I enjoy. As I've gotten older, it's not gotten any easier, for sure. And I think that's where I've really kind of enjoyed more and more the fly fishing. I always kind of would bring the fly rod along, and midday, if I end up back at the truck, I could spend some time fishing. And now I find myself planning a fishing trip that hopefully I can hunt elk in the morning and the evening, so it's kind of changed as I've gotten older. Still try and stay in reasonable shape, but, definitely doesn't get easier as you get older. That's number one. I've never spent a lot of time and never found a big mature mule deer, and that's kind of on the top of my list right now of something I want to try and do. Again, I love being out in the mountains. As I've gotten more into rifle hunting and getting honestly better quality equipment, and having the understanding of my optics and my calibers I'm shooting more and more, and getting out, and Montana's got a pretty long, that's a whole nother debate too on the length of seasons in Montana, but I would love to get out and chase some big mule deer. Otherwise, I'm not a guy that's hunted. I hunted in Scotland because Rob invited us over there, and that was a blast.
What were you hunting there?
Well, I ended up getting a Sika and a red deer, and it was a cull hunt, so we ended up getting multiple, and I think more than anything it was the culture of being over there and just how they did things differently, and it's a whole different system of how the wildlife management works over there. And I actually listened to your podcast with Rob. He kind of explained all that, and just the people over there were nice. The food was great. The weather was terrible, but it was we were in the Highlands of Scotland, and it was just a incredible experience. Jen and I both want to go back, just nothing else for the food. But it was a great experience. I went to Mexico with Steve and shot a Coues deer down there, which was fun. I had the opportunity to take a bighorn ram a couple of years ago, drew a sheep tag here in Montana, and never understood the draw of sheep before. I'm like, yeah, it's a sheep, I see them by the highway occasionally. But right. The tag I put in for specifically was one that I wanted to have a mountain hunt. It's not a huge trophy unit necessarily. There's some decent rams in there, but it's not like hunting, farm fields or, hay fields somewhere where you're going to kill a, 200-inch ram. The biggest in this unit that anybody's ever heard of. I think it's like a 180, and those are few and far between.
Sure.
But it's close to home, and it's in an area that I love to fish. My wife and I love to go up in there all the time anyway. Rugged peaks, 10,000 feet, and I wanted a mountain hunt. I wanted that experience if I ever drew. Not expecting to draw, I ended up drawing it. Now I see the allure of sheep hunting. Like it was cool. Especially up there where I was. I ended up, I went in with Rick a few days, a few weekends, and got close to killing one with my bow. Didn't make it happen. That was actually during COVID as well, so there was people everywhere, in places I didn't think they should be. And it was a year of a big fire here in Bozeman, so we had a weekend or two of no visibility, just smoke everywhere. And ended up going up with my rifle, and I was solo on the trip. I killed that ram with, and was able to get in with my inReach and get help to come help pack stuff out. But it was my camp was 7 miles from the trailhead, and it's in a wilderness area all on foot, and then I was couple miles from camp, and I was able to pack meat down. But that was a great experience. So that, any chance I get to go on a sheep hunt with somebody, that would be, yeah,
You're
I would
in
do.
now.
Yeah, I'm definitely in now and understand it. And it's funny because coos deer hunting kind of reminded me of that.
Oh yeah.
A lot of time glassing, sitting up on vantage and finding a spot to just glass, and those things just disappear. And same with sheep, they go hide in the shade somewhere and you never see them again. But coos deer had the ability to just completely vanish. Plus they're tiny, so a whole nother challenge there. But had a blast doing that. But really, I've not, other than Mexico and Scotland, I've never even hunted outside of Montana. So it's hard to argue with having the availability we have here and the species we have here, and I've just never felt the need to go anywhere else. And elk is what I love, and mule deer I enjoy, and we have those around here. So haven't traveled a lot, haven't hunted a lot outside the state. I haven't hunted at all outside the state, and that kind of covers it. Simple taste, but dream hunt, maybe someday do a caribou hunt or something. I think that'd be fun. But I put in for moose and goat every year, but have yet to draw. So we'll see. Eventually, someday.
Well, if you ever decide to have a road trip down to Texas and you want to, I'd be more than happy to host you guys coming on down to one of the ranches here. So
oh yeah, be a good time.
That's open. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was curious when you just mentioned the 2 hunts that you put in there for. What are the odds? Is it very hard to get kind of a moose tag? Is that something that is very difficult up in that area?
It is. It's pretty hard. Montana has a system where each unit has an allotment of 1 moose or 5 moose, and it depends on the number of people that put in for it every year. It could change, and something shows up on TV, or somebody sees a giant moose and that word gets out and more people put in for that unit, and your odds just go down.
Sure.
They're single digit or smaller percentages in most units.
Yeah.
Montana has a system where you get preference points, so and they square them. So every if you put in for 2 years, you have 2 points, but they square that, and then it goes. So as you get a lot of points, your chances definitely go up. I put in for a unit this year according to Onyx's platform, Top Brett. Said I had, with the amount of points I have for moose, I put in for a unit that said I had about 20% draw odds, but still didn't draw. So
each year that number kind of goes up. So
it does, but
sooner than later.
But you're never guaranteed. So
yeah, sure.
You're never going. I mean, it could be a draw could go to the guy who put in for the first time, and he has just as much. That's the benefit of the system, is that the brand new hunter has he has the ability to draw just as much as a guy who's been putting in for 30 years. The drawback is the guy who's been putting in for 30 years may not draw, and it might go to the guy who does the first time. Whereas, other states, you max your points out and you're kind of guaranteed to draw.
Sure.
so, different systems, but yeah, I'm working with Montana. So, yeah, not great odds. My sheep tag I drew didn't have great. I think I had like 3% draw odds or something in that unit, and then I can't put in again for 7 years.
Yeah, and I knew there were some that were kind of. Is there any that are one and done, or is it 1 and 7 or 10 or 15, whatever it is?
in
Are there?
in Montana, they're all 7 years on the
Okay.
big three,
Yep.
and elk you can put in for every year,
Yeah.
even if you draw. And then like Idaho, I believe, is one and done. It's once in a lifetime tag, but they kind of limit their system differently because you have to pick which one you're going to put in for. Versus I can put in for every single. I mean, I know people that draw. I know people who've drawn, moose, sheep, and it's a trophy elk tag all in 1 year, and it fills up their season quick and puts a lot
Sure.
of pressure on you. But it's possible. Whereas like Idaho, you have to. I think you can do elk and deer every year, but for moose, sheep, and goat, you have to pick which one. And I
Right. Right.
might be wrong on the trophy elk units too, but so it limits the amount of people that are putting in for each species and ups the draw odds. And then it's, as I understand, it's one and done, and you can then start putting in for the other ones.
For the other ones, right. Right. Right.
Yeah. So
what the as far as related to wild game, is there a particular go-to dish or a couple that you love cooking and eating the most out of the things that you're hunting and fishing?
yeah, I'm a simple guy and I'm not a great cook. I smoke stuff, and just, my wife's, I like the taste of meat, and I don't marinate anything. It's salt and pepper, and smoke it and keep it medium rare most of the time. And in reality, throw a little butter sear it at the end with a little butter on there, and that's my go-to, and that's what I do 90% of the time. Nothing fancy at all. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I like to keep it simple and
I think that's a great answer.
taste what I'm eating.
That's kind of when we catch fish, one of the first thing I'll do is I'll just cook it as is, like, maybe
Yeah,
a little oil or something like that, and just, keep from sticking or whatever. And I got a new smoker, so I'm starting to kind of really take that to another level. But I
yeah,
like to just take things as they are the first time. And it's like kind of like it reminds me of I think it was like a Google or Windows or something. They had a deal where they brought everyone in for lunch when they were interviewing them and stuff. And anybody who they went and saw put, seasoning on their food before they tasted it, like
yeah,
that was someone who's questionable to hire right away. Like it's like this idea, like try it as it is first and see what you do. And then I love just the natural flavors of a lot
yeah,
of the meat too. But
yeah.
no, so it's a good answer in my my palate.
The same way. Even the burger, even the grind. Like I usually don't add any. If I do, it's very small amount of fat to the burger. You see a lot of people add 10-20% pork or beef fat, and I'm like, I think I'm just going to keep it natural and go from there. So yeah, that's what we do. We keep it simple and eat pretty much the same thing most of the time and enjoy the hell out of it.
That's cool, man. That's cool. You mentioned like, the idea of like bucket hunts and bucket fishing. I was just curious as fishing wise, because that's something that I know you
Hmm.
talk about, you and Jen love doing. Is there a place that you guys have not yet gone to that you want to go and spend some time fishing at?
We've talked about trying to do like, one of those like South America, New Zealand trout fishing trips. It seems like a huge undertaking to try that. Actually, Rob he goes down to Patagonia, I think,
Mm-hmm.
fairly frequently, or I don't know, frequently. He's been there a few times,
Right.
and New Zealand, he's been there, and we were planning to try and do like one of those like 10-year anniversary trips to New Zealand or something, and fish. We're actually going to Arizona to fish, this fall, and we told Rob about New Zealand. He's like, nope, nope, yeah, Patagonia's better. You got to come. I'll take you to Patagonia. And I'm like, oh, I'll be your guide. I'm like, okay. So, someday I'd love to do that. Those are kind of, it'd be fun to go, fish like the flats and redfish or something, that I've never done anything like that. I did tarpon on a fly once, which was a blast. I'd love to go do that again down in the Keys. And that
Mm-hmm.
was just sort of, I'm lucky that I know a lot of people that, like, hey, I got a way I can get you out here, and did half a day and caught a baby tarpon, but I had a blast. And it's probably a 30-pound tarpon, but it was, like I said, on a fly, and I didn't catch that 100-pounder or whatever, but it 30 pounds is much bigger than the trout I'm used to catching. So I was
Yeah.
happy as a clam and not complaining at all. But I'd love to go down and do that again. But I think, yeah, South America probably, or New Zealand would be kind of our bucket list fishing trips.
That's great, man. That sounds like some fun places to go.
Yeah.
Um, I know you got some things to get back to. I know you guys got the big warehouse sale coming up, so I don't want to take you too much more of your time. One of my final questions that I've been asking everyone too, and I was very curious, your take on it, is the idea of a legacy. And I wanted to
Mhm.
know what you feel like your professional legacy you'd like for it to be. And, maybe that could be, your law enforcement time as well as through FHF. And if those, are, maybe those are different answers there. And as well as kind of personally, what is it that you want to leave behind, and how do you want to be remembered, and, your mark on this world?
It's an interesting question. It's one of those things, like, I feel like I ended up here by accident, so it wasn't anything I ever planned to do. As far as professionally in this job, I think I want to be, I don't even say I want to be, I want FHF Gear to be kind of remembered as a place that took care of customers in a way that made gear that worked for everybody, made gear that worked for them, listened to them, built gear that, you know, evolved with them, evolved with the industry, and is always something that wasn't made in a way just to sell a widget. I want to sell gear that people are going to pass on to their kids, high quality, highly functional. Just, some of our pieces, like I mentioned before, are not, the profit margin is not why we're selling it. I'm selling it because it works, and it goes with other gear and makes it more useful and makes people enjoy their time in the field. It's not gonna help you. I can't be like, this is gonna make you kill bigger elk, but it hopefully will help you enjoy your time outside more. So, I'd say from a professional standpoint here, that's kind of the goal. From law enforcement side, I think I did that career in a way that I'm proud of. You hear the headlines on TV and how, there's this, negative perception of law enforcement a lot of the time. And I'm proud of the career that I worked. I have no misgivings about, when I was young, I learned a lot and had the ability to work in an agency that I was proud of, and we treated people well. Like I mentioned, I think in the kind of the pre-interview stuff, that, I still run into people that, I've arrested in the past, and, they'll come up and thank me for, one, how they were treated, or two, how they, what that happened was bad at the time, but changed the direction of their life and made them be in a better place now. And I think, and as a leader within the sheriff's office at the time, I was a first line supervisor most of my career, and really enjoyed that position where I had the ability to kind of affect the line guys day to day versus being in the administration and, being part of the bureaucracy. It was more like I'm working alongside guys and helping mentor guys. And, my hope is that the guys that I worked with remember, having somebody that stood by them and, help them along in their careers. So I'd say from that respect, that's where I'd go. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah. And then as far as personally, if I
Um,
could, outside of your, your professions that you've had.
yeah, personally, it, it's a good question. It's one of those things, like, I've tried my best to, and I will say that's probably the one where I feel like I still have more work to do, is, having kids and having a full-time job and having a second full-time job, during a lot of it, I think, I failed in many respects when my kids were really young, and trying to reconnect in those respects, and kind of teach them the things that are important to me. And but having kids that are, my daughter just graduated high school and going to college, and she's got these dreams and ambitions that I'm super proud of, and my son's a freshman, and hopefully as they go through, I'm able to help kind of guide them along, and keep them going the direction they're going, and to be good humans and productive humans. And I guess that would be the goal, I guess, probably as parents, that's all of our goal at the end of the
Sure.
day. But yeah, it's one of those things that I'd say has probably been one of the bigger challenges I've had, especially doing the whole entrepreneur life, and on top of a full-time job. So yeah, I'd say that's probably where I'd go with that.
Well, thanks for sharing with that, man. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of great perspectives that you just shared there, and very powerful. And I think a lot of people can relate to a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I know I can too, with my personal thing too. It's like I put a lot of things in my own obstacles in my way. I was drinking a lot when my little, my youngest was young, and I kind of realized one day that if I just eliminate that, that'll help me to be a better father and
Yep.
husband and friend. And when we can find some obstacles and, eventually move them away, you can kind of clear the path for something better. And, it took me a long time to learn a lot of lessons that I needed to learn that would have been more beneficial to learn them quick, like if I could go back then.
Yep.
But
Yeah. I heard something online recently, and it said something like, if you're willing to answer a business call during family time, you should be able to answer a family call if your kids call you during a business meeting. And kind of puts that in perspective. Like, yeah, that's probably more important. And, I don't know that I always had my priorities I know that I did not always have my priorities where they should have been. And, trying to learn from that as I've gotten older, I think has been, one of my goals. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, family's more important than whatever you're doing, and ideally you're going to be able to be balanced in both, and be successful in both doing that.
It's funny. I was actually just thinking about this today, and the idea of, as before the podcast, a lot of times I'll tell the people, hey, here's how this is going to go, and here's certain things we can do if we need to stop along the way, and reiterate things. And I think, including that too, you got a call that from your family you need to take, by all means, because that's
Yep.
something that if I see, my wife's like, hey, I need to hear you now, I'd be like, hey, Paul, hold on, let me,
Right.
and just or let's hit pause on this, because that is something that I'll always put that family, call first if need be. It doesn't matter where I'm at. If someone needs me in my family, I'm going to be there for them, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's another one I'll have to cue into the
Yes.
preamble. So
Yes, indeed. So,
good point.
yep.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for being here today and taking your time out of your day to talk with me. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I know the listeners will too. And, maybe if there's any time you have some big announcements of some things you guys are dropping, if we want to do like a little mini podcast, 10,
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes, and just kind of, throw it out there just to kind of let people be aware of everything that FHF Gear has coming up. And for those who don't know where to find your company online, and if they want to follow you online as well, can you go ahead and give us the socials and the links for that?
Just FHFGear.com is the website. Obviously, you can find us through the MeatEater family brands as well. And then social is just at FHF Gear, Facebook and Instagram. We're not doing a lot on any other socials at the moment. My personal page is super imaginative, FHF Gear _Paul. Don't post a lot on there. It's mostly, just kind of random stuff. A little more family and outdoorsy stuff. And but yeah, really trying to re-engage with the audiences on our social channels. And like I said, I'm actually on there a lot of times answering DMs directly, through the main page channel. So my wife runs most of that at this point now. And so, between the two of us, we're able to try and take care of people.
Well, I know any questions I've ever had, any posts I have on Instagram and stuff too, you guys are very quick, or you or a team member, Jen or whoever it may be, is quick to answer. So if you guys got any questions for Paul and the team there, fire away and you'll get a good answer, and you'll get the even better gear than you'd ever thought you needed. So go and check them out, everyone. And Paul, once again, thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and by all means, we'll catch up again.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care, man. Hey, everybody. Want me to let you in on a little secret? Okay, it's not a secret anymore. You know that some of the best knives in the world right now are coming out of Montana. Montana Knife Company. Josh Smith and his team over there are making hands down some of the best knives on the planet. They are made in the U.S. They are creating quality jobs here, and these guys are just fun and make a wonderful, wonderful product. It depends on whatever you want. You want something in your kitchen? Culinary set. You want something out there to use in the woods? They've got that. In fact, many choices. You want the super lightweight? You want something a little bit bigger? You want something for fieldcraft? They've got it all. Go check out MontanaKnifeCompany.com. You'll be glad you did, and make sure you tell them I sent you.